that Freedom House says that Tibet is the second least free place in the world after Syria. We have no ability to assess your claims because your government doesn't allow us access. And that's unfortunate because I think we would like to assess the veracity. Gendun Choki Nyama is recognized by the Dalai Lama and by the international Tibetan community as the 11th Panchen Lama. We don't know if he's dead or alive because he, along with his parents, were abducted by PRC authorities when he was 6 years old. So I would like to ask you, sir, if you know, is the Panchen Lama, Mr. Gendun Choki Nyama, is he dead or alive? Are his parents dead or alive? Where are they? And can international independent authorities have any opportunity to access them?
2016, the Chinese government began the wide-scale demolition of Larangar, one of the largest Tibetan Buddhist centers in the world. In 2016, the Freedom House report ranked Tibet in the second worst in political and civil rights after Syria.
Tush Dile and welcome to In Conversation with Tibet TV. This is Sakina Bhatt. For today's episode, I have a very special person. He is a Canadian politician and a vice chair of the Parliamentary Friends of Tibet. His name is Garnett. Welcome to the show, Garnett.
Thank you. It's great to be with you today.
So, Garnett, you've been in Dharamsala 3.5 years ago, and now you're here again to attend the March 10th program, which is the National Uprising. So, how do you feel about coming to Dharamsala, the exile home to His Holiness the Dalai Lama?
Well, it's a great honor to be here. Obviously, a very important occasion as we reflect on 60 years of strong advocacy for justice and human rights, and recognize the tragedy of what happened 60 years ago, and recommit ourselves in the current context to continuing that fight for peace, for justice, for human rights. So it's an important occasion to be here, but also this is a beautiful city. It's an honor to come here at any time. It was a great experience for me being here 3.5 years ago, kind of starting my journey in Tibet advocacy, and I've often since reflected on just what a beautiful and inspiring place this is, and it's great to be back.
Garnett, you have appealed a lot of times on Tibet issues, especially on religious repression under the Chinese leadership, underlining the demolition of Larangar and Yachangar. So how are these appeals heard in the House of Commons? How does it work?
I certainly look for opportunities to highlight these issues, to make sure that people are aware of them, they are not forgotten, and that they form part of our understanding of the repression that happens in the PRC. I believe that those kinds of statements do make a difference, and it depends on the context in which they're made. Sometimes I've talked about these issues just as part of a larger speech, and it brings greater awareness among members of Parliament and those who are watching. I've raised these issues in Parliamentary committee directly with Chinese government officials. So we had a situation where the PRC officials responsible for the administration of Tibet were before our Foreign Affairs Committee, and I was quite pointedly questioning them on various human rights issues, and that's an opportunity to challenge, to confront, and to hopefully increase public awareness, but also to hold accountable those that are involved in these repressions.
You also support the middle way approach, which calls for genuine autonomy and not for complete independence. So what is your view on the resumption of the dialogue?
We continue to push for that, obviously. We should take note of where the current Chinese leadership are at and what kind of challenges and opportunities that presents for those of us that are advocating for justice and human rights. So, even to see over the last 3.5 years since I've been sort of more actively involved in this, how that's changed. China's posture on the world stage is more aggressive and more threatening, but that is also leading to a stronger response from other countries and a greater level of awareness. So I think the strengthening of that response on a wide variety of issues, whether it's the South China Sea, human rights in Tibet, just freedom of speech in China in general. But I think that our engagement and pressure is a key part of that process, not allowing the aggressive expansion of that ideological system, but instead continuing to push back on it. I think that pushback is what's going to hopefully cause the current or a future incarnation of the Communist Party leadership to rethink the approach.
What is your association with the Canada Tibet Committee?
Well, so the Canada Tibet Committee does great work in Canada in partnership with with other organizations, and they work to keep us as parliamentarians aware of these issues. Their work informing us, supporting us, and the ongoing conversations we have are really important. Even for those of us that are committed to this cause, there's a lot of things that are competing for our attention as members of Parliament at all times, right? There's lots of different issues out there, and so having groups like this and others that can inform us and support us in our desire to stand up for justice in Tibet is vital, and I would certainly strongly praise the Canadian Tibetan community for their high level of political engagement, and I think they're a model for other communities and for others involved in this issue around the world to look to just how effective they've been.
So you said that you also participated in the Friends of Tibet internship program.
Yes.
So can you briefly tell us what is this internship about?
Mm-hmm. So for 2 months out of the year, we have an intern in our office, and that intern is involved in really whatever work of the office that we want them to be involved in. So that's an opportunity for us to have a young person from the Tibetan community right there keeping us informed about those issues, but also for us to help them get experience in the political process. So I've been through the program for 3 years, and it's always been very valuable. The Tibetan students who come through our office are hardworking, are interested, are engaged, and they work on a variety of different projects. My suggestion to anybody involved in these kinds of causes in different parliaments around the world is, there's a saying, personnel is policy. When you get the right personnel in there, when you get people that are volunteering or interning and then hopefully taking on staff positions, getting elected to office themselves, who come from the community, who have a knowledge and a commitment to these issues, your ability to move the issue forward is so much stronger when you have the people right there.
So this Friends of Tibet internship program is only for the Tibetan students?
Yes, this particular program is for Tibetan Canadian students, getting them on Parliament Hill and engaged with the process.
So how important do you think this internship is?
I think it's extremely important. It just becomes so much easier to do more when you already have someone with all the knowledge there. To have somebody there that already has that knowledge and information just makes it so much easier to be involved in that advocacy. For parliamentarians, people involved in parliamentary friendship with Tibet groups in different countries, I would encourage other parliaments to get on board with it. And maybe the model will be slightly different in different places. Maybe it's not 2 months, maybe it's a different mix depending on how the schedule works, but I think it's a very worthwhile thing that we're doing in Canada, and I would recommend to others as well.
So Garnett, your association with the Tibet cause has been for quite many years. So what inspired you to champion the cause of Tibet?
Human rights have been important to me from a young age because of the experience of my grandmother. My grandmother was a Holocaust survivor, and it was through her experience that we just became aware of kind of the impact that politics can have in a negative way on somebody's life, and therefore kind of coming out of it the importance of being politically engaged. And so that was kind of my opening engagement on human rights issues. Really, my most active engagement on the Tibet issue began when I came to Dharamsala 3.5 years ago. I was interested in a general way in the issue at the time, but that interest really deepened when I was able to see just what the nature of the Tibet advocacy, Tibet causes is all about. There are many different people groups around the world that face injustice of one kind or another. But I think the way Tibetans have responded to that injustice is really a model. Resolute courage, but nonviolence, love, goodwill, continuing hope and optimism, being very tough in insistence on what is right, and yet also being loving and open-handed. I was struck when I met at that time His Holiness the Dalai Lama. There was no indication of bitterness at all towards China, towards the Chinese people, and that was really inspiring for me. So that was really how how it started. And I hope that other people groups who face injustice around the world will look at the Tibetan approach as a model for how to engage.
So how does your family feel or think about your support to Tibet and the Tibetan people?
Well, I'm married, I have 3 young children, and when I first was elected, my daughter was 2 at the time, and so it was a bit of a challenge, because being a member of Parliament, especially in Canada, when you live far away from the capital, there's a lot of travel. So it was important to be able to explain to my daughter, why we were making the sacrifice we were making as a family in terms of time away and being involved in politics, and that was kind of how we started a lot of conversations about justice and human rights. And I remember talking to her fairly early on about the Tibet cause specifically, and my involvement in Tibet, and then her saying, well, where's Tibet on the map? And saying, well, actually, Tibet is not an independent country. It was taken over. And it was sort of funny when I first discussed this with her. My daughter, as maybe you'd expect, has an outsized belief in my ability to affect change. So I told her about it, and then a couple of weeks later, she said, "Dad, have you solved it yet?" So that was an opportunity to talk about patience.
How
and how
old
these
is
things
she?
take time. Now she's 6. Yeah. So so the long and the short of it is my family's very supportive, and they're very aware of it, because again, when your dad's going away for a week to India, right, you got to understand, well, why is he doing that? And that's the opportunity for these conversations about how me being here does make a difference. And me being able to talk to you and highlight these issues in different ways, it does have an impact, and we need more parliamentarians doing the same thing.
Okay, Garnett, thank you so much for speaking to Tibettv. It was a pleasure doing this conversation with you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next episode of In Conversation with Tibettv.